right, welcome back. This is Syrup Dishes here. We are here looking at some custom epoxy river pour cutting boards. Now the idea here is I'm going to learn, I don't do a lot of woodwork, but I'm going to learn to do some epoxy pour cutting boards and eventually grow those into being able to make a table, whether that's a coffee table or a dinner table. I have a friend that we've been talking about making these tables, and you see all these videos online, and here you have average guys who just don't do woodworking. Now I do have access to planers and good table saws and things like that, but I don't own them. So there are ways you can do this. As I'm learning, I'm going to be using planers and getting access to those. But I went to Montana Custom Millwork in Billings, Montana, and I found some live edge ends and boards, and real great people over there hooked us up with a few boards. Now they do have some cupping, they do have some twists. I'm going to show you in this video how we take those out. I've got some maple, apple wood, and some cedar. We're going to make some planks here. See what they look like. So we're going to head in and make a platform for these that have a twist in them to be able to run those through the planer and take that twist out of there. So should be lots of fun in this video. Syrup Dishes here hanging out. So thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to Montana Custom Millwork for finding those live edge boards for us. So that was great. Here we have 2 pieces of silver maple and a piece of apple wood. We've put shims under those and hot glued those down to a piece of particle board to even them out. There's a twist in each of these boards. These are ready to run through the planer. We've hot glued a piece of particle board right there to the ends so the planer doesn't push them through. Take that twist out on the bottom, plane the top, then you can flip it over and get both sides parallel. So you see right here, this is nice and smooth. We've run these through the planer. That top side, when it's attached to the particle board, has to get nice and smooth and flat. We're just popping them off of this hot glue right here. Worked great, held it down perfectly. Doesn't take much at all to get them off these shims. We know we have one side square and flat now. Now the other side still has to take those twists or cupping out. So we're just going to scrape this hot glue off of there, and we're going to go ahead and run these through the planer one more time. Get this side nice and square and flat, and then we're going to go move into ripping these down the center once we've done that. So get all this hot glue off, and we should be ready to go. Mark them up with some pencil and run them through again. Now that we have both sides nice and level, you can see on this one a little planer snipe. You can also see the bark is still attached. So the next step is removing this bark. We're just going to use a chisel and a wooden hammer and just chip away at that. We'll get this bark off of there so the epoxy can settle right into the wood on all of these boards and get them set up ready to go for epoxy. So your next step is to begin building the molds. You'll notice on these boards I haven't squared the edges very well, and that's going to cause some problems with overflow on the epoxy. So we'll correct that for the next time. This is our first go around, but the idea here is to cut your boards all even sizes to create a mold. Cut it a little bit larger, wrap the boards in tuck tape, square them down and fill them in with silicone, and that should get you a nice square mold right along the edges all the way around. Let's see what that looks like. Well, here we are with this all tuck taped, and I have it lined up for you with my corner clamps, cheap corner clamps. You get them for $4 at Harbor Freight. We're going to find out how well they work. But in these seams right in here, I'm going to put some white. I bought white on purpose so I could see it. Silicone caulking, and then I'm going to place some screws right through the ends of these boards. And then when we've got that put together, we're going to flip it over and we're going to do the same thing with the base of it. And we're just going to silicone that and screw it in, and then we'll run silicone beads through all the corners inside and out to make sure it's watertight. So let's show you that work. want to just show you a little imperfection on the mold that we made. You can see right here at this corner I had a screw push at the wrong angle and bowed it out, so my fit and finish is not as tight. I'm going to go ahead and test this with water, let it dry, make sure that nothing will leak out. It looks pretty airtight to me though from here. So as we finish taking a look at that seal on the mold, we want to make sure our temperature in the workspace is 65 to 75 degrees. I do have a heater going on in here. We'll go ahead and check the temperature. You also want to make sure that you have all your supplies set out ahead of time and ready to go. So I'm going to need some clamps, some blocks and tape to hold the boards down so they don't float, my color pigment, a torch, a drill, my mixing materials, and of course my epoxy. I've got gloves there to help protect my hands through that. We will be using this Bleu de France. Check everything to make sure it's level. Got my temp up almost to 67. I do have this over 2 meat lugs in case I have a leak that it drains on those, but you can see my bubble here on the level is right in the center in both directions, so I know I'm really level here, and I can go ahead and get those set in and begin pouring epoxy. So we're doing a 2-to-1 mixture here with plastic and hardener. I estimated at about 30 ounces is what I needed for this pour. This is the first time I've done it. I've read up and it says nothing's perfect. So I'm going to do 600 milliliters of resin. You can see me pouring there. And then we're going to go ahead and add in 300 milliliters of hardener, and we'll get that stirred up using this silicone paddle with just my DeWalt drill. I did end up spilling a little bit of this, turning the drill on too high. Hold your cup tight and make sure that you have that drill going at a good variable speed. It wants you to mix it for about 5 minutes. Halfway through that 5, I added some of our Bleu de France color pigment here. It's a metallic pigment. I added just about 7 scoops with a stir stick right there. Then I came back and added 7 more. It just wasn't dark enough. And now here comes the show where it mixes right in and you see that beautiful color. Let's follow and watch this all the way through the pour. Just at that 24-hour window, we're checking the hardness with the leftover resin in this cup. Left it in there so we could see how thick it's getting, and take a look at that, how gummy it is right there. Don't want to touch the board yet because that'll ruin the cutting board completely, irreparable. We want to zap any bubbles with the heat now while it's still semi-liquid and let that fill in. Let's keep watching, see what happens. The cure takes a long time, so in the meantime here I've built 3 more molds. You know I have more cutting boards, and I've brought 3 boards, 1 maple, 1 applewood, and 1 cedar down. Check the temperature at 69, and we're going to let them get to temp. You could see that our planer took out some large chips. We tried to move smaller increments and run it through the planer again, and it made worse. What you're looking at here is the first run of 60 grit sandpaper on the orbital sander. We are going to continue this process as we believe this chipping is due to our mixture for the resin. It was our first time ever mixing resin, and we're not familiar with it. So let's see what happens as we finish this board out through the sanding process. Hey, thanks for tuning in to Average Guys Syrup Dishes here. That was our very first epoxy pour river cutting board. We had some problems. First and foremost, it was twisted, the board was, and so we had to run it through the planer. Second, we didn't square the edges very well. Third, when we built the mold, there was some screws that pushed out and the mold was a little tight, so the boards didn't lay flat. Third, as we poured the epoxy, we were at about 67, 68 degrees and it wasn't drying very well, and we didn't get a very good swirl, very good pattern out of the epoxy while we were doing that, trying to figure out how to stir that. Third, as we did this, it chipped the epoxy when we ran it through the planer. As a result, our board ended up getting too thin for our taste. Still real good though, because it chipped out on us. Fourth, we have a couple swirls on there from the epoxy, and the last one is our thin set epoxy didn't come in, and so we didn't fill in some of the air holes on the bottom. We didn't fill in some of the knots that didn't have it. So those are just a few of the problems here, but we're gonna learn from those mistakes. We got 3 more boards to go, and we're just happy you guys are tuning in to us. That was so much fun. I mean, I'm not a woodworker. You guys watched me go through this, watch the struggles. I just encourage you to get out there, try new things, try new adventures, and thanks. I'm Syrup Dishes. Thanks for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed this.